and welcome to our coffee chat. I'm Kathy Robertson, the General Manager of Community Futures Cowichan, and one of the member organizations to Cowichan Strong, which has been working the last few weeks to try and bring as much information forward to the Cowichan community as possible. So today, really happy to introduce Walt Judas, the CEO of the Tourism Association of BC, and his sidekick, is that right, Calum?
Something like that.
Yeah, his sidekick, but equally as important, Calum Matthews, who's a director of tourism Vancouver Island. And together they're going to co-present on what they know, the state of the tourism and the impacts due to COVID, and help us understand it further, and hopefully give us some insights on going forward, some value information on that. Following their presentation, we always like to open it up for questions and make it interactive as possible. To do that, we ask that everyone use the chat box, and that certainly helps manage it in a much cleaner way. So throughout the presentation, we keep folks on mute and we monitor the questions via chat. And when it's over, I start to bring forward the questions that we've got in the chat box. And that generally takes an hour. It's not always a hard stop in 60 minutes. Where are you gentlemen today? Is it a hard stop for you at 12 noon? Got a few minutes to run over?
Other than for lunch.
Okay, all right. Well, sometimes that can be super urgent. So yeah, let's plan for 60 minutes, and I'm sure it's going to be a great presentation. So with that, how about we have Walt go first, a bit of an introduction, and then maybe Calum a bit about TIABC, and we can roll into it from there. Thanks, everyone.
Great, thanks, Kathy. Good morning, everyone, and nice to be joined by my good friend Calum. If you don't mind, I'll go through the presentation, then turn it over to Calum. That might be the easiest. And I'm going to ask to share the screen now, because I do have a PowerPoint that I'd like to run through this morning quickly, and certainly looking forward to the questions afterwards. So let's see if we can pull up the presentation. It says host disabled attendee screen sharing. So if we can enable screen share, that would be great. Can we do that, Holly?
Yeah, I'm just looking to see how I can do that for you.
So let me know. There should be on the share screen. Okay. It looks like I'm the host now. Can you see my screen where it says Duncan Cowichan Chamber of Commerce?
Nope.
Okay, let me try this again, see if it works. Oh, here we go. Now it should, does that come up?
Perfect.
Okay.
No.
Sorry about the delay, and thank you. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning. The first few slides are just really a very basic description of the Tourism Industry Association of British Columbia. We are the advocate side of the business. We're not-for-profit. We have a number of industry associations and members in destination marketing organizations and different sectors, etc. So our vision is for tourism to be recognized as one of BC's leading and sustainable industries. We have a very small shop. There's only 4 of us. I'm the only full-time person, but we report up through a 13-member active board of directors. You can see who they represent here, including a few people from Vancouver Island that are part of our board. These are the committees that our organization is structured around, the most active being policy, followed by membership and communications. Now, for some reason, I am stuck on this slide. I'm not sure why it's not advancing.
There we go.
Let me try something else here. There we go. All right, and our membership consists of 23 sector associations, over 50 DMOs and 100 businesses. The sector associations really represent thousands of both employees and businesses. So it can be everybody from the BC Hotel Association to Guide Outfitters, Bear Viewing, BC Taxi Association, etc. So it's quite extensive. Within our subcommittees, these would be the issues the policy committee in particular would normally be dealing with. So the bane of our existence is about helping to influence or change policy, in some cases eliminate policy as it affects the tourism industry across the province. So these 5 topics here and subtopics might be something that we would be pursuing with aggression at this point, other than, of course, the big variable that all of us are experiencing with this pandemic. And so we've obviously shifted our focus to a number of issues that I'll quickly review today and make sure that there are plenty of time for questions at the end. So the biggest issue for most tourism operators around the province is liquidity and debt. Liquidity being cash flow issues that so many businesses are facing because they have ongoing cost with obviously no revenue, no customers, no staff. Most places are closed, and therefore they are increasingly incurring debt. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. The travel and gathering restrictions you are well aware of, where we have been encouraged to stay close to home. Even inter-regional travel has been discouraged, never mind intra-regional travel and travel from other parts of Canada, and of course the international borders being closed. That has impacted tourism dramatically over the past couple of months. Taxes, fees, and deferrals are some of the other issues. The province has moved forward with a number of initiatives to help us out in that regard, but we still have issues around fees and deferrals, and I'll talk about that again a little bit later on. Relief program eligibility and uptake, this is largely at the federal level. They have been introducing a number of programs on a very regular basis, and we are appreciative as an industry. In fact, every sector appreciates those programs, but there are shortcomings in eligibility. And there is a dearth of tourism operators actually applying for these programs, and I'll explain more in a couple of moments. Recovery timing, what does that look like, and when will that take place? And once we're into recovery from a tourism perspective, will people actually have disposable income to be able to travel further afield? What about confidence? Being confident in the fact that the place you're going to is able to accommodate you, has good health and safety practices in place, that is by individual operators, that you feel confident in traveling again. And the last part of this on the social license issue, will communities open their doors and welcome visitors back? To what end? And what's the timing thereof? So lots of considerations there as well. So when things first unfolded in mid-March, I would suggest, shortly after we had the BC Tourism Industry Conference in Victoria, where we managed to bring together 450 delegates. We also had a session on COVID-19 and what to be prepared for. Little did we know that the wheels would essentially fall off the industry and things would pretty much move to a standstill scenario. So immediately we sprung into action as TIABC with all our sector associations, the regional tourism organizations, the community destination marketing organizations, essentially the industry, to provide feedback to government on what was needed to allow the industry to remain whole, to allow businesses to remain solvent, to allow us to have an industry to come back to once all of the restrictions and we were on the other side of the pandemic were addressed. So the first thing that we asked for in a very extensive submission was the establishment of a tourism and hospitality emergency fund. And it was what I alluded to earlier around cash flow and liquidity issues. This is what we felt was needed. Some would characterize it as a bailout, but it's really an opportunity for tourism operators to pay their bills and meet all of their fixed cost obligations without incurring further debt. So more on that in a moment. We also asked for some temporary measures like property tax or employer health tax reductions or deferrals, some of which government has done and at the provincial level. 10-year fee suspensions or deferrals, loan payments, et cetera, and again, I'll flesh these out in greater detail in a moment. We asked for the province to assist the community destination marketing organizations who, as you may know, rely on the municipal, regional, and district tax to generate revenues that they invest in marketing. Well, those community DMOs have essentially been gutted as well. Many people have been laid off. They are poised and ready to begin marketing in the recovery process, but they too have fixed costs and obligations that they need to meet. So we asked for some assistance, and just last week, it was formally announced by the province that they are committing 10 million to help out these individual DMOs. We've asked also for assistance to tourism and hospitality sector associations, like TIABC, like the others that I mentioned, who provide a valuable service to government in the form of providing strategic advice and policy recommendations, industry intel that government needs as a part of its decision-making process. We also asked for special one-time multi-year incremental funding for Destination British Columbia. Now, we put our stake in the sand early in the game. We were still very much in relief and response mode. But
yes, are you open for business?
We still wanted to put our stake in the ground and make sure that government was paying attention to it.
Can I check on one for you?
Or somebody is not on mute. If I can just get you to make sure that you're on mute, that would be great. Thank you. We also asked for stimulus and recovery funding for tourism product investments. And stimulus funding can be anything from infrastructure development, like highways and access points. Maybe it's another amenity that communities need to, again, generate some of that tourism interest and demand that will be so desperately needed after we're on the other side of this. And of course, we asked the province to assist to advocate to the federal government on the needs of the tourism industry. And again, they've very much done that. On the one hand, looking to fill gaps at the provincial level, but on the other hand, continue to amplify our concerns at the federal level. So more specifically on some issues that have recently been raised, the TIABC has been involved with and submitted recommendations to government. So tourism operators around the province are finding themselves in a real predicament because of this specific regulation under the Business Practices and Consumer Protection Act, which suggests that businesses must provide customers with a refund 15 days after the cancellation of a contract. So obviously, with so much business being canceled as a consequence of the travel restrictions, etc., these businesses are compelled to give back this money. However, there are problems with that, of course. First, the legislation was intended for individual company failures and not the massive halting of the tourism industry itself because of a pandemic. It's a force majeure event, which means that customers can demand that they receive cash refunds without incurring, or receive cash refunds without incurring a penalty. And that's a problem, particularly for seasonal businesses who have already spent money on startup costs. Many of them need equipment and supplies. They're getting their backcountry lodges, by way of example, ready to welcome visitors. They've hired staff. A lot of onboarding costs have already been spent. They have no longer any cash reserves left over from being off for the winter and now are heading into the peak season and haven't got the means to give those funds back. Insurance companies are not honoring a lot of the cancellation policies and deflecting liability. So that leaves a lot of companies on the verge of folding. They desperately need help. So what we've asked for in a couple of our recommendations to the province is extending the date of refund from the time of cancellation. Many jurisdictions around the world are doing this. So as opposed to 2 weeks, maybe it's 2 years. Another suggestion that we put forward is enabling the supplier to offer a voucher or credit for up to 2 years before you actually have to give a refund. You will see that the airlines are doing this and they don't have an end date on the credit. But on the other hand, previous to that, when they said your voucher was expiring by a specific date, say 1 year from the time of the original travel date booked, that's illegal in British Columbia. We can't do that. So we think there's a means for sort of a happy medium. Now, I think as many companies as possible want to retain their reputation and offer a full refund, but as I say, they haven't the ability to do so, and many clients are accepting a voucher or a credit of some kind in return with an added incentive. So it's an emerging issue, one we're keeping a close eye on, and if it spirals out of control, we will definitely need some provincial help. At the moment, they're not suggesting that they're going to venture into this area, but at some point they may need to. We've also asked for suspending the enforcement of the legislation for a minimum of 2 years post-recovery, or at the very least, enforcement of any penalties. So another issue, you may have seen some media about this because it was certainly prevalent on Vancouver Island with some of the major convention areas, Nanaimo and Victoria being a couple of them, but you know all about this prohibition of permitting the gathering of 50 people or more than 50 people. And that has, again, caused some consternation for the meeting, festivals, events, conferences industry. So we've offered a couple of recommendations because they are so significantly impacted, and the Chief Medical Health Officer has suggested there won't be any meetings or bigger gatherings through to the end of the summer and maybe even through to the end of the year. So we've asked for a rolling evaluation plan every 30 days to look at this and say, can we reevaluate depending on where we are in flattening the curve? The other thing that we've suggested here is to allow for larger gatherings in proportion to the size of the venue or outdoor space, and using space configuration models with the appropriate distancing protocols and health and safety measures. Now, this one, we're equating this to what larger big box retailers are doing. They've got a 100,000 square foot venue, and they're easily welcoming 200 or 300 people to shop in that big box retailer. Why couldn't we do the same in a large venue like a convention center or even outdoor space? I know at parks on Vancouver Island, you will see in any given nice weekend a couple hundred people in a 10,000 square foot area. There's no reason why we can't use the professionals who are used to crowd management, crowd control, space configuration, in and out procedures for an audience to be able to do the same. So in conjunction with that, there are best practice standards being developed by the meetings and events industry that will hopefully be able to convince government that this is something for consideration to salvage at least part of the business for the last half or last quarter of this year. So one other issue that I'll mention, and the slide deck is quite a bit longer, and in the interest of time and giving Calum his forum as well to talk to you about things that are happening on Vancouver Island. The temporary layoff situation is very problematic for a lot of operators who are not in business at present, haven't got any prospect of hiring back staff in short order, and are faced with the prospect of severing employees after 16 weeks of temporary layoff, in which case they have a huge severance bill that will be due. And again, without revenues, without a prospect for reopening, and being able to pay that severance, that will put many of these businesses into insolvency. We're already well into the temporary layoff period. It has been extended, to be fair, in British Columbia from 13 to 16 weeks, but most operators, as I mentioned, will either not open or they don't have any prospect of increasing their staff load to the point where they have a full complement of people and don't have to permanently sever anyone. So a couple of recommendations that we've made is extend this provision to 26 weeks, or even better, extend it to coincide with recovery, which in the tourism world is expected to be at least 12 to as much as 18 months or more away. So hopefully we'll get some traction. It's not a direction that government wants to go at present, although other provinces are trying to actually follow the federal government's wage subsidy program and coinciding their temporary layoff extension for as long as the government has the temporary wage subsidy initiative in place. We haven't quite gotten that far, but hopefully we'll see some movement if more than the tourism sector deems this to be a problem. So I'm not going to spend time on these because there's a fair amount of slides and I wasn't sure how much time I was going to take, but let me jump to these random recommendations and I'll wrap up. So these are still some of the outstanding things that our industry is faced with. Right now, rod day fees for anglers and angling guides are due, park fees are due, land tenure fees are due, and in some cases, we're talking about thousands of dollars. So we're still looking for either waiving those fees or a significant deferral or some kind of a program. And I understand they're making some adjustments to rod day fees. I don't quite understand the formula yet, but I'll learn more about that today. We're looking at targeting the date for opening of international borders. They're closed until June 21st. It's one thing to say they're closed until, it's quite another to set a target date so that tourism operators can begin planning for when to welcome guests back from international locales, keeping in mind, of course, health and safety protocols, testing, all of those things are at the forefront. The minimum wage increase went into effect yesterday, so that's kind of a moot point, but nonetheless, some operators are concerned about that. And then wholesale pricing is the last one for the hospitality industry. That's something that we've asked for to allow particularly bars and restaurants and pubs to earn a little bit more revenue than they might normally and give them a chance at salvaging, again, some of their businesses or preventing closures. Priority right now for most businesses in anticipation of opening are best practice guidelines and protocols that can be in place that revolve around health and safety measures, how to welcome guests and how to protect employees. And the final slide that I'll end with, here's some resources that you can look at, and Calum will outline others. But the Vancouver Island Coastal Tourism Resiliency Program that was co-founded by Tourism Vancouver Island has had huge uptake. It's a great program, and it's been extended now to all regions. And there was an announcement yesterday on funding. So this program will continue for the foreseeable future. It's an excellent resource for businesses who have questions, who need some guidance through various government programs. And Calum and the team at Tourism Vancouver Island can be very proud of the work that they're doing. So I'll leave it there. Thanks very much. And I look forward to answering questions after Calum.
All right, thanks a lot, Walt. And yeah, Walt, nice to see you and lots of other familiar faces on the call.
Hi,
Yeah.
Calum and Kathy. I'm
Hi, Kathy.
just going to pause you. We have a bunch of folks in the waiting room, and so we're just going to let them in.
Okay,
And,
could we get screen share set up from on my end, if possible?
Yep, we'll do that after the host lets them in. Because once we give the screen share to you, we lose control. So therefore, we can't do the letting in step.
Oh, gotcha. Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah. No, thank you for your patience. Thank everyone. So we'll just wait for Holly to give me the thumbs up here.
So we have a few folks that are joining us now and connecting. just want to make sure everybody gets in before I hand over the reins to you, Calum.
Okay, so that's a lesson to every one of us who's using Zoom. Once you give up control for the screen share, you also give up control of letting people in into your meeting. So much to keep track of. Okay. How are we doing, Holly?
All right, so Calum, you should have the sharing option now.
Cool. I think we're up and running. Did that work?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'll try to move through my slide deck quickly. And then if there's questions, of course, happy to answer them. So the areas that I'm going to cover for you all, talk a little bit about the research work that we've been doing at Tourism Vancouver Island for the last 10 weeks. Talk about the Tourism Resiliency program that Walt so kindly mentioned. And then, you know, also hint at some other activities that we have going on behind the scenes around recovery marketing and working with our partners like Tourism Cowichan to support the industry's recovery more broadly. Yeah, so that said, a huge thanks for putting this on, and for I think the Chamber as well for highlighting the importance of tourism as an industry and the really significant challenges that we're facing today. For those who don't know, I'm with Tourism Vancouver Island, and my role is typically focused on destination and industry development. But I think, like a lot of folks' day-to-day roles, my responsibilities have changed a little bit with COVID, and so we work to develop this program and our research initiatives and issues of advocacy. And we're also a nonprofit organization. We have an industry-led board of directors representing all different subsectors of tourism and all parts of the Vancouver Island region and the Gulf Islands. Our role broadly, we really want to work to unify the Vancouver Island tourism industry, to amplify the work that our partners are doing and share successes, and to really collaborate deeply on everything that we do. We have a kind of a partnership first approach to doing business, and many folks on this call we've worked with in the past and continue to. From a regional perspective, we knew going into March, we had developed what we thought was a really sound business plan for the year, and we were excited about our strategy. And a couple days into March, we realized that work will be put on hold for the foreseeable future, and we needed to kind of redefine and reimagine our purpose during this time to really provide meaningful support to business. So from our perspective, that looks like, first of all, understanding the needs of business. So that's why we launched a research initiative really early in March, and we've completed 10 weeks of survey work now. We have taken a stronger advocacy role, really working directly with Minister Bear and the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture to advocate for the needs of business. And a huge thanks to Walt and his team for the advocacy work that they're doing that's so important and so well aligned with the work that we're also doing. It's about pushing in the same direction. We're also developing recovery marketing campaigns and business recovery, which is the Tourism Resiliency program. And last but certainly not least, we also understand the need for our industry to be, kind of working together during this time. So the final kind of aspect of our approach to supporting recovery from COVID-19 is around industry leadership and destination leadership. So we work with our Vancouver Island and Gulf Island-based destination marketing organizations, and Tourism Cowichan is your DMO for the Cowichan Valley, and they're deeply integrated into the BC tourism system, and very strong advocates for communities and businesses in the Cowichan Valley. Quite quickly, the business intelligence survey work that we've been doing, as I said, 10 weeks of completed surveys. What initially started as a Vancouver Island initiative has now gone province-wide. So we have province-wide reporting, an average sample size of 500 businesses each week. And our CEO, Anthony, reports findings typically every other day to the ministry, and then we deliver a more comprehensive report to the ministry on Monday. I just hopped into the surveys that we're conducting this week, so this is really hot off the press. And I think that it'll underscore how dire a situation we're facing here on the island. This week, 58% of businesses reported that they were unable to cover their bills in May. About 50% report being at risk of bankruptcy, with somewhere around 20% saying it's very likely that they'll face bankruptcy in the coming months. 60% of businesses report being currently closed, and essentially all of the other remaining businesses are operating with significant reductions in services, hours, and staff. And we're seeing cancellations push well into 2021, and it looks like the impact will be felt into 2022, as Walt mentioned. It'll be a very slow and challenging recovery for the industry. A component of our survey work right off the bat was trying to understand how we can support business. We heard all about the advocacy initiatives that Walt's been working on, and those issues have come through our reporting and survey work as well. And so we've been using that information to basically advocate on behalf of the needs of our stakeholders. And a couple of the bullet points here, very similar to what Walt has highlighted as well. The other aspect of the survey work was we gained a stronger understanding of how we as an organization can actually provide meaningful support to businesses. And what we heard was support in streamlining communications was key. There were so many newsletters, and it was challenging for businesses to actually stay on top of what programs are available to support them. So we've been able to streamline our program material, various program materials, and help them get into the hands of businesses and help businesses make sense of that. And the final thing we heard was that typically our tourism business stakeholders they're able to handle their typical HR issues, financial challenges, marketing issues, but the impact of COVID was so immediate and so deep that they were facing challenges that they've never dealt with before, like mass layoffs, really challenging solvency issues, having to adjust from perhaps a long haul or international market to a more local market. And that's in part how we developed the Tourism Resiliency Program. So the Tourism Resiliency Program started here on Vancouver Island, and it was thanks to a grant from the Island Coastal Economic Trust. So I just want to give a huge shout out to Lynn Robert and her board of directors for their faith in us and for prioritizing the tourism industry. And as Walt mentioned, we are so delighted that the other regions across BC have been able to pick up the program that we developed and implement it in their operational areas. And Destination BC has also taken our key learnings in our program, and they are currently offering that to the Vancouver Coast Mountains. So it's really great to work in partnership with those organizations. And just here recognizing some of the program partners that we have on board, and also the participating regions in delivery province-wide. Network is a long-term business resiliency program that delivers meaningful one-on-one support to tourism businesses as they navigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, adapt, and work towards long-term resiliency. There's two main components to it. The first is client care, or as we call it. So that's a program advisor is matched with a business and basically provides hands-on guidance through that business's entire journey to long-term resiliency through the program. So every business has a go-to contact to support them through this challenging period. That program advisor starts by triaging the needs of business and completes a needs assessment document. We then ultimately co-create a support plan with the business that will kind of guide the different supports and services that are available and that are customized to the unique needs of each business. We're able to get businesses access to really tactical instructional documents around financial forecasting, dealing with legal challenges around HR, and all sorts of other things. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, we're able to get businesses access to a huge range of tourism experts that can help them deal with these really significant challenges that they're facing. So just some of the experts we have available are HR, finance, public relations and communications, marketing, operations, sustainability and energy reduction, and and also business strategy. So we're able to support businesses with a whole host of experts. The final component of the program is a digital resource hub. So we've now been offering several months of weekly webinars, and then also workshops and community forums. So, webinar similar to this, about an hour-long presentation with a Q&A. Our workshops are much more instructional. So folks are working through a document. We're hosting one next week about developing financial forecasts for your business, and you'll leave with something tangible. And then we've just launched a new initiative, Community Forums. We're able to get businesses together that are facing similar challenges, and we work together as a group to solve those issues. And we started that off with marine tourism operators, and it was an incredibly successful session. We were able to share key learnings about sanitizing equipment, creating welcoming spaces and safe spaces for guests. And we look to build on that in the future. We will have a minimum program delivery time of 6 months, but the recent funding announcement from WD that will be $1 million split between the 5 regions will enable us on Vancouver Island to further extend that period of delivery, which will allow us to kind of adapt the program to real-time needs of businesses over the course of the next year or so. We currently have 300 businesses registered and actively participating in the program and are matched with program advisors. And while we're certainly aiming for quality over quantity, but we're certainly still striving to reach more businesses and support the majority of our stakeholders. And we're absolutely taking new businesses on in the program right now. And I often forget to mention this, but the program is completely free for businesses to participate in. So no cost at all, thanks to the generous support of our partners. So there's a little bit of an overview of the Tourism Resiliency Program for you all, and my contact info there if there's any offline questions. And yeah, other than that, just really wanted to mention again that we really feel a collaborative and aligned process is key to our industry's recovery, and that's where for us working with partners like Tourism Cowichan and the other community DMOs across the island is so important. So just want to recognize that Jill's here joining the call and thank her for that, and also thank Jill for the work that she's doing to support the industry here in the Cowichan Valley. So I think I'll leave it there, Kathy, and happy to take any questions, program specific or a little more broadly.
Thanks, Calum. Between yourself and Walt, that's a lot of information, and nice to see that both your organizations are, all systems go, supporting on all fronts. Clearly, you've demonstrated the need for that, so thank you. First question in the hopper is comments around whale watching. And we know it's faced a number of challenges recently. So the comment was on reopening it.
Perhaps I'll just share some of the key learnings we had from our call last week, and then I'm sure Walt also has some things to share on this. So essentially, the whale watching industry has worked together here on the island to develop a set of opening recommendations that I understand are currently waiting for approval. But I certainly do anticipate that whale watching companies will open for business this summer, and that they will implement best practice guidelines and recommendations to keep their groups safe. Walt, are there any more specifics that you'd be able to share?
Yeah, I'm actually speaking with one of the whale watchers this Friday to get a better sense. So I wish I had more information to share. You're accurate, Calum. I think they are anticipating opening, albeit I think a lot of them will park their boats, the majority of their boats, for a time, unless they see that domestic tourism can fill the gap. But for most, it's the international visitors that embark on the whale watching tours. So we'll see what kind of uptake they get once they are able to open, but I suspect it will be slow growth again in that sector.
Thank you. So I think more specifically to you, Calum, our next question is just participation around the Tourism Resiliency Program, and maybe if you can let us know how Cowichan has participated. Are you getting a good response from our local businesses? And is there anything we can do as a community to support our businesses in your program?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for asking, Barry. I wish I hopped into our CRM before this to take a look at the Cowichan based numbers, but last time I looked, there were a couple dozen businesses from the Cowichan Valley involved in the program, but there's certainly room for more businesses. And I think that we may have identified the Cowichan Valley as an area with a little bit lower uptake than some other parts of the island. We have a amplification toolkit that I'm happy to share with any businesses that want to help amplify the program. It has key messaging that you can post on social, include in any newsletters you might have. And, I think by and large, what you can do to help drive folks to the program is, remember to mention it if you're giving updates to businesses, include it in your social media and your newsletters. And if folks have questions about the program, please always feel free to refer them to us directly. And if not, to our website, tourismresiliency.ca, where you can register.
We'll be doing that for sure. So thanks for that, Calum. We'll push those out in the next couple of days. So again, I'm sticking with the business resiliency program. Can you maybe share the scope of businesses that could apply to get support through it? We know that tourism cuts across all sectors, but do you have some boundaries on that?
Yeah, great question there, Mark. Generally speaking, so for here on the island, if you are a stakeholder of Tourism Vancouver Island, you're eligible to be in the resiliency program. So, retail type businesses, anyone who feels they've got a stake in tourism is welcome to join the program and get support from us. That said, the program probably isn't a great fit for businesses like gas stations, realtors, businesses like that. The easiest way to find out is on our tourismvi.ca, our corporate site. There's a stakeholder criteria list, and it's a really simple table that you can take a quick look at, and that'll let you know whether you qualify as a stakeholder or not. But if you're unsure, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we have been getting lots of questions like that. And if we haven't been able to offer support to a particular business type, we are at least able to refer them to other organizations that are better positioned to deliver kind of sector-specific support.
Thanks, Calum. So jumping to the tourism sector, we all know the value of sports tourism. Has there been any conversation in your organizations about mitigating the impacts from the loss of sports tourism or sports gatherings?
Yeah, Kathy, if I can also add to that, the question about a graduated plan for the meetings and events industry, because it's all within the same realm. And
You bet.
If you caught earlier on the slides of what the industry has put forward, the events, festivals, conferences industry has put forward to government with respect to recommendations on how to actually re-engage the sector, which is effectively shut down between now and the end of the summer or longer. And that is to look at these protocols, health and safety protocols, and gathering guidelines with a view to expand them, to convince government that there is a plan in place that adheres to what government directives currently are around social distancing and all of the, as mentioned, health and safety protocols, but do it in such a way that it allows the industry to set the mark, if you will, for larger gatherings, be it sporting events or a meeting, etc., but doing it also in a locale that can accommodate more than 50 people, well over 50 people. There are worldwide examples where that's being done, and conferences that include several 100,000 people following the protocols, but doing it in a space that is large enough to accommodate them all, that has easy in-out access, that doesn't cause people to cross paths too often, that has space configuration set up in such a way that people are able to distance themselves and yet they can still participate, that provides food services, by way of example, that might be buffet style, but the way it's set up is completely safe as well. So a number of those things are being considered, and the health and safety best practices by the industry are being put together now. In fact, the hotel sector already has something for events and conferences, but other sectors are following suit. So it is on its way. Whether government will choose to relax the edicts that they have at present, we'll have to convince them of that fact, because they still will draw back to one major convention in Vancouver in March that was really one of the causes of an outbreak in British Columbia. And so they are a little bit gun shy, to be fair, about hosting larger gatherings, and you can see why. And the industry wants to respect that, but has a means by which to open the doors a bit further. And maybe it's in graduated steps. It's going from, say, 50 to 100, 100 to 200 eventually, and you start domestically, that is conferences and events that attract only British Columbia residents, and eventually further afield. So it's a graduated plan. It will take a while. It may not happen before the fall or even later, but nonetheless, it is being worked on, recognizing the value that sporting events and conferences, et cetera, bring to our provincial tourism economy.
I'm sure everybody in the industry is going to be happy to hear that that effort's being put into it. So thank you for that. Jumping to our next question, it looks like it's a two-parter. I'm looking for feedback from you folks about any ideas about promoting local tourism. So probably on the theme of tourists in your own town. And then second part, jumping out to the long term. What do the conversations look like inside your organizations about whether it's a year or 2 years from now on international travel? So Calum, maybe do you want to go first? Tourist in your own town, how do we do that well?
Yeah, so I think what I'll start by saying is that, I think I want to first of all just recognize that it's a challenge, and a lot of our stakeholders rely on long-haul travelers. Leading into the summer, many businesses had the best bookings ever, and were expecting an exceptional year. And now we're here at the start of June, and businesses are having to make the decision as to whether they can adjust to a local market. And for many of them, it's simply not possible to make such a significant pivot with such short notice. That said, what I will share is, at least at a local level, and then I'm sure Walt will have some perspective around the work that Destination BC is doing, but we're working with all of our community destination marketing organizations to try to have, first of all, really close alignment with the Public Health Office. We absolutely do not want to be providing any sort of messaging that goes against the recommendations from public health. That comes first and foremost. And then what we're also advocating for is, typically organizations like to really advocate for road trip type marketing, stop in a variety of communities and take part in a variety of activities. But what we've been told is that that's not appropriate for this summer, because that's just too many touch points and too many stops along the way. So what we're really looking to do is encourage folks to explore their backyard, to at this point in time stay local, and as the summer progresses and we move into phase 3, whenever that may be, then traveling a little farther afield from your community will be possible and welcomed. But it's definitely going to be challenging, and the marketing organizations have, it was great that a grant was available through the province, but a lot of our DMOs are seeing decreases in funding for marketing by 80 to 90%. So it will certainly be a challenge to mobilize local marketing campaigns. And the final thing I'll say is that there's a ton of competition, and communities will be really fighting it out for a lot of the same customers, which is where here on the island, we're really advocating for a highly coordinated and collaborative process with all of our communities.
So if I can add to that, thank you, Calum. That was a very good explanation. Destination BC's campaign up until a couple of weeks ago was Explore BC Later. And that was in keeping with provincial directives about staying home, only traveling for essential needs, etc. And effectively, that's still in place. The last couple of weeks, they have shifted their messaging to Explore BC Local. And so that means really within your own hometown for the time being, or immediate area, if only because the state of emergency is still in place. and we have been encouraged to stay local for some of the reasons that Calum mentioned. Eventually, though, staying local might include a region. So take Vancouver Island. Um, Asking people to travel within the island would be a good next step. Ultimately, we'd like to be so far ahead of flattening the curve that we can encourage travel between regions. So Vancouver Island to Metro Vancouver, to the Okanagan, etc. So kind of a graduated opening, if you will. And I think that will unfold as the summer moves along and as long as we're progressing, as I mentioned, in flattening the curve. That said, we know too that domestic travel, we don't really have a choice at present because of the other travel restrictions that I alluded to earlier. And we very well may see an extension of the border closure well beyond June 21st. In fact, Health Minister Dix had suggested that they would like to keep it closed for the foreseeable future, a lot longer than June 21st, which is problematic because domestic tourism isn't the panacea for the business lost from international visitors. So it's really the only choice that we have, recognizing that it will be a fraction of really what we need for the industry to salvage the year. That said, I think that all community destination marketing organizations and the regions will definitely be promoting as the opportunities become available within region, beyond region, and then hopefully at some point domestically from the rest of Canada, and then eventually internationally, likely sometime later in the year. You may have seen that Yukon is opening its borders to British Columbia again, and I would anticipate they would expect a reciprocal offering so that Yukoners can travel to BC without fear of any kind of restitution or fear of their vehicles being vandalized or what have you. But that raises another point, that in as much as communities would like to see more visitors, at present, they're not necessarily welcoming visitors for simple fears that they've always had, the ability to accommodate people who may be sick or needing some medical attention, the fear of obviously contracting COVID and otherwise. So this whole notion of social license will be extremely important. That is, communities and residents giving permission to tourism businesses to both operate and to be promoting and welcoming visitors at some point. So that's a moving target. It depends on the community, but we know that there are those that have had signs up and blockages that prevent people from traveling. Even people on ferries have been told to go home. We still hear a consistent message about staying close to home, so we'll abide by that for the time being, looking for the right opportunity and social license to be able to promote more aggressively on a local level.
Excellent. So I have one more question, and then I'm going to create a little bit of space, give a small part of our closing agenda to Jill from Tourism Cowichan, and happy that she's able to give us an update. But before Jill, Walt or Calum, can anybody talk about how the border towns between Alberta and BC, they have a really close relationship, but a border right in the middle? What are you hearing from that area?
Well, I can tell you that people in the Kootenays find it really dumbfounding that you can have somebody travel from Vancouver or Vancouver Island over 10 or 12 hours to visit the East Kootenays, and yet places like Lethbridge and Calgary are a mere couple of hours away. And that's more their bread and butter market. So somebody traveling 10 hours has to stop or visit or travel through several communities and has a higher propensity for contracting more people or contacting more people along the way, and potentially throwing things into chaos in that community than an Albertan does. So there's some of that going on, to be sure, but there's also caution that Alberta's cases of COVID are much higher and that health and safety protocols must be adhered to. And while Alberta is bread and butter, some communities fear having Albertans, and there has been vandalism against cars. But now what we're seeing is recognizing that things will begin to open up as we progress through the summer. The flip side, people are putting nice notes on Alberta cars who are already in BC. So it's a good sign. But aside from all that, there is a group, particularly on the adventure tourism side, and many of them have operations in rural British Columbia and in the Kootenays and in the north, who are putting together a strategic plan to present to the federal government first and foremost to find ways to open the border to people at low risk. So that means testing would be done on the other side of the border. People coming into British Columbia would do so, say, on a private plane or a charter, not really encounter any of the general public in those communities, go straight to a backcountry lodge or with a guide outfitter and never see anybody other than the people that are hosting them. And so there are those health and safety protocols that can be put in place, but it needs to be, again, sold at the federal government level, supported provincially, and then at the community level before it can ever move forward. But that's work that's being done now as a pilot project to see if we can expand opening our borders, whether it's to Albertans, Americans, or other international visitors.
Thanks for that, Walt. That's kind of inspiring, actually, to see the businesses within those subsectors being solutions focused. And I think that's helpful for everybody who's at the big table right now. And so excellent work there. So we're coming in on 12. So Jill, you're up. Would love to hear more about how Tourism Cowichan's involved in all this. So thank you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much, Walt and Calum. And I work with Calum's team almost every day. We're very closely aligned with what's happening with Tourism Vancouver Island. It's where we take our cues from primarily to develop new messaging and campaigns and marketing for the Cowichan region. And even though in the last little while we've changed our focus a little bit to be more on supporting local businesses, there's still lots of things that we're doing in the background to support recovery down the road and when it's safe and in the proper way. And one of those things is that we've put the word out for recruiting our new Destination Management Marketing Advisory Committee. If anyone would like to apply, I have all the information that I can send out to you. That will primarily focus on what recovery looks like for particular subsectors of the industry in the coming months and probably over the next year. And then we'll evolve more back into a traditional DMO type of marketing committee. The other thing that I've been working on is that prior to COVID starting and disrupting everything, we had made commitments and we're building partnerships with other organizations and projects that are still moving forward. They're just not being presented in on the pace or in the same way that they were originally intended. So some of those things are the BC Ale Trail, there's a new BC Bird Trail, Ride Island, working with 39 Days in July to help shift what that festival will look like, and we're going to be supporting that. I'm on the Cowichan Valley Wine Festival Committee. That's going to look very different this year. And then Ride Island as well, working with Cowichan Trail Stewardship Society and mountain biking associations to be able to still promote those types of activities in accordance with what the province and TVI and what Walt's organization is recommending to us. And we're going to be releasing some of those pieces of information on a local level while we build out that bigger campaign to evolve back into what was originally intended.
Wow, you guys are busy.
Well, you guys is me, unfortunately. If you see something good, it's me. If you see something bad, it's me. I've been, our team has been cut back to just me for the next little while. And, but with one of the new grants from the Ministry of Tourism, we're going to be resuming our relationship with Destination Greater Victoria and be able to bring a marketing support person back on our team. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I bet you are.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's impressive to see that there's still some energies putting forward into all those other programs, because they will matter
Yes.
once we get through this. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to
what's happening. It's just not, you don't see it yet, but you will.
Yeah. I'm going to put Sonia on the spot in case she may want to give an update on the Visitor Info Center that has plays a huge role in our local tourism. So Sonia, if you can hear me and you have some updates, we'd like to hear from you.
Oh, hey everyone. Sorry I was late getting on the call, but yeah, the Cowichan Regional Visitor Center opened officially on Monday. I guess that was yesterday. For the last couple weeks, we've been doing a trial basis with just having our washroom accessible. As you can imagine, there weren't many washrooms available for people traveling from Victoria up to Parksville or whatever. So we did set some protocols in place and opened one of our washrooms, and that has now expanded to an adapted visitor services experience with visitor servicing at our kind of glass doors at the entrance to the facility. So we're actually really busy. I'm amazed. It's not just washroom use. It's people that are coming in looking for trail maps. You know, not everyone's using an app on their phone, so they're like, you know, can I get a new trail map of Maple Mountain or whatever? So we are seeing people popping in saying, hey, what's open? I hear, you know, Hand of Man Museum is open. You know, what are they doing for protocols? Yeah, we're starting to see the buzz around the campaigns of, you know, experience your own town or be a tourist in your own town, whatever that might look like. So we're hopping. We're open 5 days a week, 10 to 4, and moving into July, we anticipate moving again back to our 7 days a week, and with the full facility being open.
That's great news, Sonia. Very optimistic.
Yeah.
So we're just after 12. I'm not seeing any more comments, but on behalf of everyone, I will speak for you and say that we can always email and phone you or your organization for more information. So probably easily found on the Google. So thank you for that. And so with that, a big thank you to Walt and Calum for the latest updates, of course, to Jill and Sonia. More important updates locally, and I'm glad everybody made the time to be a part of this. Lots of good learning, so thank you. And you know what? It's recorded, so if you loved it that much, you can watch it again and again, or share it out with your friends. Go to the Cowichan Strong website. Give us about 24 hours; it'll be posted there.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.